Do you always gravitate towards using the same colours? Do you feel that some colours just don't work for you? Perhaps you feel that they don't fit your style. Do papers and paints then just sit about unused? Keep watching and I'll give you some tips on how to make colours work for you. I'm Kylie, mixed media artist, art journaler, book artist and maker of many things. In this video I will be creating another page to add to my concertina journal that I'm building over 2024. Last week I explained that I was making a concertina journal or accordion journal that I would build over the course of 2024, adding one page every week. And I would be doing the back and the front of each page. So last week I made the front cover and also page 1. As far as possible I want to be using a lot of scraps up in making this journal. The pages are 4 inches by 5 inches and I'm using scrapbooking papers as the substrate, but what I'm doing is adding collage to these because the papers are not very thick and I would like my journal pages to be nice and thick and kind of tough, I guess. So my first layer of collage is simply a gel printed page. It is basic printer paper, computer paper, so in itself it's not terribly thick, albeit the paint does make it a bit stronger. And I'm just using a matte medium to stick it down and trying to make sure that it's fully adhered. And all I do is use my ruler just to take the excess off. As I said last week, I'm quite happy for the pages to look a little rough around the edges. And I do the back of the page in the exact same way. It didn't have to be the same paper, it's just that piece of paper was big enough to do both sides. Once that's done, I'm going to put down my next layer of collage. This is just looks like a roller off page, just used up excess paint on it. And I'm just tearing out a couple of pieces, the pieces that have the most paint on it, and just putting these down. And again, I will do this on both sides, leaving out as much of the white as possible. Now at this stage, looking at this, those colours don't go terribly well together, but I will show you how this can all be integrated. And I'll even be adding in my least favourite colour ever. I have never liked it, but I'll be adding it in just to show how you can actually use colours that you don't like and make them work for you. Once this side's complete, I will flip it over and I'll do pretty much the same on the other side. Again, just to reiterate that I don't necessarily want to use the same papers on each side, it's just for convenience because these happen to be lying about on my work table. For the next layer, I'm simply going to add in some bits of old book page. This was actually an old dictionary. I had been using it for collage on some paintings earlier in the week, and again it was lying on my desk, so these were scraps and I just thought I would use these up on these pages. I think that probably like many of you, I have lots of paper scraps lying about, gel printed pages, roll off pages, the kind of underpaper pages that we use on our work tables, and other things that we just see coming into the studio one way or t'other that we just can't let go. And I was just pointing out those little bits of pink there. Now I have on occasion used pink in the past, but I am really not a pink person. It is my least favourite colour. But I'm sure many of you will like the colour pink. You may even love it. But it's just not a colour for me. And it tends not to be a colour that works for my grungy style. But today I'm going to make it work. While I don't want this page to look the same as my week 1 page, I want it to almost be in harmony with it. I don't want it to be something that sticks out like a sore thumb, so to speak. Though, as I said last week, some people like all their pages to be entirely different. And that's the thing about artistic freedom and artistic expression. So that first layer of tissue was quite thin, and it's actually, you can see that it's kind of translucent, so it's not sticking out too much at this stage. But I'm now going to take this brighter pink paper. It's not a tissue, it is more on, I think it perhaps came off a paper bag or something, and I'm going to add that on. And to me, this is absolutely jarring at this point. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, have I done the right thing? But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going because I'm going to make this page fit into my journal. Again, I'm doing similar on both sides of my page. Next, I move on to a piece of tissue paper. I think again it was kind of gel printed, but I've also made some marks on it, and by the looks of it, those marks were probably done in a burnt umber. Now again, these will be slightly translucent in places, and you'll see that I'm using these in some instances over the top of the pink paper that's down, just to kind of break up that bright pink at this stage. But I don't want them just on top of that. I want them to spread out a bit across the page. So at this point, my page on both sides is looking very bright, very colourful, but I'm going to leave it to dry at this stage because, I do have a lot of matte medium on it. So that's it dried a bit, and I am comparing it to my journal page, and you can see that there is no way that they go together. As I say, if that's your approach to things, then that's fine. You do you. But I'm now going to start to try and blend this page more into my style and allow it to fit with the journal. So all I'm taking just now is some white gesso, scoring into it a bit there, and I'm just using that not to completely cover everything, but it just knocks it back a bit. Of course, the white gesso will now look quite stark on the card, and I will need to try and make it blend in with everything else as well. So just while I'm putting that gesso down, just to let you know, if you don't already know, I am a teacher in the One Badass Art Journal 2024, hosted online by Tiare Smith. Until the 31st of January, you can save 20% by using the code BOLD20, and there's details listed below and a link that will take you right there. So I'm now going to make my page kind of grungy, bring it into a style that I feel comfortable with and that will fit with the other page and cover in my journal. But no matter your style, you can use this sort of approach. You could be using a very bright ink here to try and blend everything together if that's your style. So I've just got this sepia ink. I've put 2 or 3 drops down. I've then used a spray bottle with just water in it to dilute the ink a little bit, and I'm now just using a brush to spread it about across the page. I don't want a completely even colour on the page, and that's why I'm just spreading it in this way. In a moment I'll dry the page and the ink will dry slightly lighter, so I will go in with some more. You'll see me just going around the kind of edges here, quite thick at this point, just spreading it out without adding water onto it, down that left hand side and a little bit into the other corners. Added a little bit of water there just to dilute it a little, and what I'll do now is just to take my art rag and dab some of that off, and that in itself will start to add a bit of texture to the pattern. So you can see the difference between the two sides there, the bright pink on this side, the pink is still there on the other side, just a little bit more difficult to see. This time using the ink again, but a bit thicker this time. I added a little water, but overall I've kept it, I've not diluted it too much. Taking a bigger brush now because I just want to cover the entirety of the page. And all I'll do again is to take my art rag and dab it, and this will just give a slightly different pattern on this side to the other, and then I will give it a good dry. So I'm liking the way this is shaping up. I've still got the pink in there, that colour that I really don't like, but I've kept it in, and I'm now going to look at other ways that I can integrate this page with the other in the book, and I'm basically going to bring out the same stencil that I used last week. I'm going to use some burnt umber, but I'm also going to use some Payne's grey, because together those will just stand out a little bit against the sepia that I used on the background. And I'm also going to use some of the gold that I used last week as well. So I've used pink paper that I really don't like the colour of. I also wasn't terribly keen on the bright green of the first paper that I put down, but I've brought it all together. I've brought this page together into my kind of style and in a way that will match in, fit with the page that I've already done in my journal by doing a number of things. First off, I used some white gesso just to pull it over the pieces of collage, which kind of helps integrate it, but also helps knock back in places some of those bright colours, some of the colours that I felt were jarring. I've then introduced a colour that brings a kind of unity to the page. I've used a sepia ink, but you could use whatever colour you want. It doesn't have to be an ink. You could use a diluted acrylic paint and just do a kind of wash. I'm then using a sort of mark making to bring a harmony to the pages. I just happen to be making the marks using a stencil. And although I've used the Payne's grey, I am basically using the same colours, the burnt umber and the gold, as I did last week. So again, there'll be a read across in terms of those top layers of colour from one page to the other. Now, I have other journals where, I'm not concerned if the pages all go together or not. It's simply, for me, this style of journal, I do want a kind of read across from page to page. Now, if you're following along and making a journal like this, then obviously you do you. You can make every page entirely different. But if you want a prompt for this week, then the prompt would be use a colour that you either don't use very often or a colour that you're really not keen on, and see if you can bring your page to a point where you feel happy with it and it fits with your style. And I was actually thinking that these would make great just little mixed media paintings, cards in their own right. They don't even need to be joined into a book, but the book, the concertina book, is what I want to do. So you can still see the bits of pink there, albeit they're very well blended into the background. Just comparing it now to the existing part of the journal, it's different, but in my mind it fits well together. So I am now just going to join this page. Again, I'm just going to take a piece of this scrap fabric, and then I'll just use some of the 3-in-1 glue to attach a piece of the fabric to each side to make my page join secure. Now you could actually do this with a piece of paper, so one of the little offcuts from the paper pack could be used on one or both sides just to act as a hinge. I did not put a word on my page this week, but I might do that at a later point. I wasn't sure what I wanted to put on it, so I decided to leave it. The fabric I'm using is also a scrap. In fact, I think at some point I'd put it through the sewing machine. I was just doing some kind of either practice stitches or something of that sort. And I put fabric on the back in the exact same way. And you can see there how this journal, this artist book, whatever you want to call it, is starting to build. I'll leave links to my journal making playlists below, lots of different styles of journal. And if you like this concertina style, which is a favourite of mine, I do like this style of journal, then check out this video. So thanks ever so much for watching, do take care, bye for now.